Let's push the burr in a little farther. Yeah, that'll give you more control. Okay, yeah, definitely wide, huh?
Wow.
And so, yeah, you didn't really quite get as close as we want to the middle of the adjacent tooth, right? Just really take your time, get right there, right up against it. And then when you find your margins, you're going to be about right here and we want to avoid having all that excess. But so you also had your burr leaning toward the distal.
Yeah.
So the pulpal floor is rising so far at the margin ridge that there's no wall height. It's zero wall height. So look this way along the central groove. So you know you're following the central groove. Then look this way when you're getting close to the margin ridge so you know where you are, know the angle, and know the wall height. So now we got a dovetail in about the right position.
Yeah.
So when you're really shallow like that, it's really easy to cut too far.
Look from the mesial side to know.
When you're working on the dovetail?
No, when I'm working on the floor.
In the isthmus?
Look.
Yeah, look from the mesial or look from the distal. Either this way a bit, as long as you're looking along the central groove.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So you can see where you are, and you see how wide it is, see the position, and so forth. And when you work on the marginal ridge, look this way, so you know how close you are to the marginal ridge, and you know the wall height, and you know the angle. So that's where your dovetail should have been, right about there. Then cut right to the middle of the contact. Then, when you're going facially, get much closer to the adjacent tooth. But again, notice the direction I'm looking, so I see exactly how close I am to the adjacent tooth. And get rid of all that excess as you're finding your margin. Then, when you've got a real margin, when you have a margin that you know is going to work, so you know you're going to have some clearance, then from there, cut straight in. And then don't have the burr leaning like this. See what you did here?
Yeah.
See the angulation of your burr? So instead of having the burr vertical, you undercut that wall a lot. That made it more difficult. But see now, on the occlusal part, we have some clearance, and we have a 90-degree angle, and we have a fairly straight wall. So that's a little closer to what we're looking for. This is just to make it easier to do the rest of it. Find the margin, find the angle, get the length, then make the smooth curve to join the isthmus. But now you can see where the corner of the box should be, about right here. Okay, now put the burr right next to the adjacent tooth and nip out lingually. Get rid of all this excess as you're getting closer to that lingual margin. Keep the pulpal floor level the same all the way out to here. Then cut 90 degrees in. You'll be overextended.
So the lingual margin should have been more towards the buccal, right? Like it's wider.
It should have been, yeah, you got too much clearance.
Yeah.
And then when you made your angle here, it's acute. So you're going to need to come out farther than you would want.
And then it becomes.
Yeah, and then it's too wide. But again, if you have an acute angle, you fix it by overextending. That's very reasonable. Because if you overextend a little bit, that's not a serious error. A little bit of undermined enamel is a very serious error. Okay? So bring the margin out farther, but do it at the same pulpal floor level here. Don't let the pulpal floor rise up at all, ever. Keep it the same pulpal floor level. Once you establish the level, keep it the same all the way to the middle of the contact, all the way to the facial margin, all the way to the lingual margin. Then cut straight in at a 90-degree angle. Then you can proceed to go gingerly.
Okay.
All right? All right, keep working. Okay. Let's have your patient back a little bit here. Okay, so you're leaning your burr facially a lot.
Yeah.
How's that happening? So when you're doing the isthmus, we look either from the mesial in the mirror along the central groove, so we can see the difference between leaning this way and keeping it vertical. Or we can look from the distal, and then we know we're not leaning it toward the buccal. So you're leaning way out like this. Now if you look from the lingual, everybody leans the burr away from their eye.
Right.
So if you look from the lingual, you're always going to lean the burr facially. It's a given. So we just make sure we don't. So look along the central groove so you know the angle of the burr and the position of the isthmus. And then look this way So you know the position of the dovetail and the angle of the burr there. So again, it's all a matter of making sure you see what you need to. But first of all, you have to decide, okay, well, what do I need to see? Then we have an isthmus in a reasonable place. We can bring it all the way over to the middle of the contact. Okay, now you can proceed to find your facial angle margins. But you see your facial margin was getting overextended at the top, but underextended at the bottom. That's because your burr was leaning facially.
Right.
Keep the burr vertical, facial angly. It should be vertical. Then when you find your clearance at the top, and then get the clearance the same all the way down, it's easier to get the whole facial wall in the right position if the wall is vertical. Find your margin, find your angle, get the length, make the curve to join the isthmus. Then when you go gingerly, you can put a hole about right there. Now your lingual clearance is pretty good. Your exit angle needs to be about like this. So you got all this excess cut away over here. So, but I like where your lingual margin is. You can maybe make it go back to the pulpal floor level here and get rid of all that excess. Keep the same pulpal level all the way to the lingual margin.
Okay.
Then cut 90 degrees inward. Then join your isthmus here. Sort of ignore what you did over here. Alright, and then once you get that part done, you can find the corner of the box here and see if you can go gingerly with the 55 burr.
Okay.
Okay? Yeah.
Thank you.
Oops. Love these things. Okay. I'm going to tip your patient back a little more. Okay, I'm going to bring the patient up a little bit higher too, so you have some adjustment there that you can do. Okay, so you don't have your facial margin yet, and yet it looks like you're trying to go gingerly, but we don't want to be doing that yet.
Okay.
We're going to wait until the occlusal outline is done completely. I'm looking down the axis. I don't see your wall at the marginal ridge. It's hiding underneath. You have the burr leaning like this when you're at the marginal ridge. Okay, so where'd you get this burr?
I don't know.
Let's use the burr in the burr block. Yeah. You'll see it's a different shape.
It's 330 though.
Yeah, but not all 330s are the same. So let's take a look at the difference. So the 330 on the left is the Brewster 330. The 330 on the right is longer, and it has a much more pointed end. See the difference?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I've chosen the burr ahead of time for you that'll make life a little easier. Okay? Okay, so anyway, let's find the facial margin. Well, let's first of all lean the burr toward the marginal ridge, not away from it. Toward it when you make this wall over here.
Okay.
When I look down the axis, I want to see that wall. I want it to be diverging. So if I look down the axis, I want to see that wall. If I can't see it, and if it's undercut, then all the enamel at the marginal ridge is going to be undermined. You might want to come around behind me, and then you can see more directly at the screen.
Okay.
Unless you're watching the ones up there. Okay, they're all over the place. And of course, the dovetail should be going facially, not lingually, right? So the groove that's likely to be decalcified is the mesial buccal. There's no mesial lingual groove that's likely to be decalcified. Okay, but your isthmus position's pretty good. The width is not bad. But let's find the facial margin. So I'll get the burr right next to the adjacent tooth. We're going to nip out a little bit at a time using the end of the burr. And make sure we have a margin that we know is going to give us some clearance. Then we cut straight in at whatever angle we want. Now this angle so far is very obtuse. So we keep changing it a little bit at a time until we get a 90-degree angle. Then we make the smooth curve to join the isthmus. Now lingually, you don't have a very flat wall there, do you? It's pretty irregular. So let's go back and define the lingual margin, and then once we get a margin cleanly cut, let's get rid of this extra little piece down here. Once we have a nice clean margin, then we cut straight in from the margin. Then we find the corners, maybe here and here. You won't need to go very far gingerly, will you? Okay, by the time you get rid of the excess, you're already going to have gingival clearance. But that's the way it is on this typodont. It's got to become second nature. Okay, so once you get the exit angle the way you want it on the facial, come in a little bit farther, make a smooth curve, use a 55 burr, find the corner, maybe a little deeper axially, then smooth out that gingival floor, and then see if you get some gingival clearance, finish it with a hand instruments. Okay?